we've just completed the Parshiot leading up to Matan Torah at Har Sinai, and this week we're really dealing with Parashat Mishpatim. What I'd like to do with you in the next few minutes, is take a midrash on these Parshiot, probably a midrash that I think almost every single one of you probably heard when you were in second or third grade, and let's see if we can try and figure out what our Hazal telling us, and see if we can all of a sudden figure out some relevance and meaning in that the Hachamim are bearing in that midrash to really Jewish education today, and see what that does. So in reality, here's the midrash. Midrash says, that the Jewish people came to Har Sinai and they rested at the foot of the mountain. The Tahtitahat. And Rashi brings us a pshat at the foot of the mountain. Good. Then he brings a midrash, which ironically is super literal. Tahtitahat doesn't mean at the foot of the mountain, but it means under the mountain. So what did God do? He picks up the mountain, and the Jewish people are settled literally under the mountain, and he tells the Jewish people, you know what? If you accept the Torah, great. If not, I'm going to bury you. I'll bury you underneath the mountain. So, they accept the Torah. It's a problematic midrash. I mean, the most obvious problem is, this is what Matan Torah was all about, right? What happened to that? All those midrashim that we accepted it willingly, and the Goyim didn't accept it. Why didn't he pick up a mountain over any other nation? Plus, another question, which is the question of the Siftei Hachamim, is saying, they already said Na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh v'nishma happens at the end of Parashat Mishpatim, which is prior to this week's Parashat chronologically. They said already Na'aseh v'nishma. And then on Parashat, they already said, whatever Hashem does, Na'aseh. So what's the point? Why did God do that? Why did God pick up the mountain when we've already accepted willingly the Torah? The Siftei Hachamim gives his answer. He says, maybe that we know that they changed their mind. They accepted it. That's why, therefore, he doesn't do it for the Goyim, because they don't accept it. But even though once we accept it, in order to prevent us from reneging, he picks up the mountain and threatens to kill us. A little difficult answer. And there's really a whole slew of questions. And then there is another Midrash Rabbah, which says, based on the wording of Megillat Esther, says, when they actually kept it willingly, Kiyamu v'kibilu, they accepted what they already accepted before, during the time of Ahashverosh, during the time of Mordechai. That's when they finally does it. That's approximately 850 years later. You mean to tell me for nearly a millennium we were accepting the Torah under duress? Is that what the Midrash is coming to tell me? So I think, a little creativity, not much, we can try and understand what this Midrash means. So let me ask you, anyone have any idea, if you think a little bit out of the box, what does it really mean that God picked up the mountain and forced us to accept the Torah? Any ideas? Don't be shy. You can hit it. Yeah, go ahead.
Our faith is like a mountain that, we don't accept. It's like any idea, it's gonna crush the whole faith. Like it's hanging on to a string.
You mean like an all or nothing thing?
Yeah, it's gonna hang on to a string.
Right, so in other words, you could say that like a mountain, we all need to, okay? And that explains it. But what is the duress? That's really my question. Yeah.
With anything else, no matter how strong your belief is, it could always be swayed For example, if someone's like a Democrat, then you teach them to be like a Republican or vice versa. They could switch their values. For this, it's not a matter of switching values. It's a matter of what's morally commanded by God.
By HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
By HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when Borei Olam is saying this stuff, he doesn't want, I'm assuming he doesn't want Bnei Israel to say it, that they're going to be devoted to it, but maybe not completely, that they could be swayed. So it's like more of a...
So really, you're saying something right, and really almost word for word is actually what the Siftei Chamim, if you take a look on it, he says that he doesn't want them to be swayed away. And that's a very hashuv answer. But I'd like to depart and go in a different direction. Go ahead.
The Torah is compared to Hayim. And now Hashem is telling us that if we don't go in the way of the Torah, Has v'Shalom, that this is what's going to happen.
Right. In other words, it's not I'm going to kill you on the spot here, but you're going to eventually die. And there's a source for what you're saying, right? When God says if you eat from Etz HaDa'at Tov Vara, you're going to die. And Adam does, and he doesn't die. But in fact, the idea is that it'll eventually lead to a society of a culture of death, which is sort of what you're saying here. And that's exactly what happens with Cain and Hevel, and eventually death comes. But again, let me try something else. You are all quite bright and thinking quite complicated. I'm a simple guy, so I'm going to try and think simpler. Picture yourself in the Midbar. Picture yourself leaving Mitzrayim. Picture yourself leaving Mitzrayim. Here you are. 10 makot. Paro challenges God, pays with their lives. Makat bechorot. You escape Mitzrayim. Paro changes. You witness Kriyat Yamsuf. Right? Chazal say Yoter Ra'ata Shivha Yami Yehezkel Ben Buzi. Greatest of the Nevi'im, a simple maid saw more. Okay. You get hungry, there's man every day. And now you come to Matan Torah. And you say, God says, oh, here I am, I'm God, I'm the one who's been doing all this. You could either follow me, accept the Torah, or decide, no thanks. Does anyone believe that you would have a real choice almost? When it's so clear, and the clarity and God's presence is so existent, and it's so forced at you, and everything in God is dealing with you directly, interacting with you, it's a pretty obvious choice. So it was so obvious to the people, it's as if almost a mountain was being lifted on the head and saying, it's almost, you want to choose life or you want to choose death? You want to choose the path of the Mitzrayim or you want to choose the path of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Who in their right mind cannot choose to accept the Torah? So in a sense, maybe that mountain might be the obvious choice, which is made obvious by the strength and the presence of Borei Olam amongst the Jewish people. If that's the case, and if I'm correct, when did that change? Well, really, the presence of God manifests itself throughout the time of our entire Beit HaMikdash, our entire Nevi'im. God with the Nevi'im were there. The only time that it would manifest itself differently is when? During the Horban, post-Horban, and when God's presence is hidden. Well, what is the epitome of the hidden face of God? The book of Hester, which means Hester, Astir, Panai. So in other words, the idea what we accept God, even when he's hidden. That we engage God, even when it's not so clear. That's represented by the second piece of that midrash, that when we accept Borei Olam, when we accept him, is when we take a book like Megillat Esther, where God's name doesn't appear, and we read it into it. We read the history inside. right? There's that famous, we take Hamelech and every Hamelech is God. Because we understand that everything does happen with Hashgahat Hashem. I think that might be an interpretation. But now I have one question. So if the ultimate is to accept it willingly, and if the ultimate really takes 850 years until Mitzrayim, why does God do it this way? Why does he put us in a situation we have no choice but to accept, and then not really value that acceptance much? And that actually the ultimate acceptance is when we do have the ultimate choice of the hidden face of God. Why work it out this way? And I think the answer is, that's the only way it could work. That, in a sense, the Am Yisrael could never accept Torah or Borei Olam unless, in a certain manner, Am Yisrael was cocooned under God's presence and felt and engaged in Hashem with Hashem in a manner that was so clear. And then it could take a long amount of time till when we are engaged with HaKadosh Baruch Hu for such a long amount of time that we then extract from that experience and do what? And accept Borei Olam even in the world of Hester Panim. That is, I think, a necessary process. 10 years ago, I opened the yeshiva called Moreshet Yerushalayim. 4 years ago, after 30 years working in high school education, I decided to make Aliyah and focus on that. Why? Why would I do that? Why would I? So I think this little Dvar Torah really taught me a lot about what Jewish education really is about and what really works when it comes to bringing people close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In a sense, we need the time that we are engaged closely in cocooned with Borei Olam. We need that. It only works when we are absolutely enraptured in that experience. We get together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that divine experience in a very, very intensive manner. Almost, some may argue, to the point where things are all too obvious. And that, I think, is the experience in Eretz Yisrael. The experience of a young boy or girl coming to Eretz Yisrael and dedicating a year of their life to learning and Torah in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh is a mini Matan Torah. It's a mini, almost kafara lehem kigigit. There's nothing else to do but that. But to connect with Borei Olam. But to study Torah. But to engage on the deepest levels. That's what it's about. And I think in this, especially in our generation, it's irreplaceable. It's the only way one can make a real commitment and connection. Baruch Hashem, your educators have been doing a great job over the years. But the epitome of Torah and to crystallize that commitment is to really jump in and engage in an environment of Kulot Torah. And spend that time in Israel, and it doesn't end there. Just like it took 850 years, it also takes time. After one crystallizes that, one needs to engage sometimes at that point to bring it back into the world of Hester Panim. Meaning to engage a world where you are involved in whatever the world's around you and succeed and grow and develop. I always say at Moreshet, I'm not out to take everyone and turn them into a Kollel student. I'm out to take everyone to take your goals and make you a Ben Torah. And if you want to be a lawyer, be a Ben Torah lawyer. Engage in that world, even the world of Hester Panim. And it's okay. You could do it because you've accepted, you've gone through Matan Torah. And when you go through Matan Torah, you can now are empowered to bring it into a world of Hester Panim. And so, I encourage each and every one of you, some of you are 9th, 10th, 11th graders, to start thinking. It's never too early to start thinking. To put it in your mind, just like you think about college and everything after, to put it in your mind, to engage that special time in your lives and dedicate it to accepting the Torah, like Am Yisrael did thousands of years ago, in a world of Torah. And today that world is Yerushalayim Yira Kodesh. And to spend that time engrossed and enmeshed in Torah. And then you'll be surprised how that really forms your connection, that it will so strong that can outlast all experiences after. All Hester Panim that you will engage, you will now become Bnei Torah. And that's our hope and prayer for all of you. To be Bnei and Benot Torah, to engage together and to come together and to really build your futures based on those experiences. Shabbat Shalom. Are there any questions or something? I don't know what it was.
Thank you, Rabbi, for coming.